Hi, my name is Megan, and this is Everything Lit. Welcome back, or welcome to my channel. Today I am filming a vlog because this is going to be part of my rereading my favorites series, and for a really long time I considered Wicked by Gregory Maguire a favorite. I was obsessed with the book, I was obsessed with the musical, and now that the musical movie is coming out, 20 years later, I thought it was time to revisit this. Now, a lot of you voted in the poll that I put up on my channel and chose this for me. 75% of you said to read this, and I think that was 3 or 4 of you out of 5. So thank you for voting. This is what I will be reading in this vlog. So let's talk a little bit about my history with this book. Why did I consider it a favorite? Well, I have my old, battered red notebook. And in this red notebook, I kept track of every book. Also, doesn't it look insane? I would manually do the math and figure out how long it would take me to finish a book. This 1067 minus 653 is oh, that's how many pages I have left. And then I would divide it by, the time spent reading, and I was a nightmare. I still do this when I'm bored, but usually now I use my calculator. So this book log, you can see I started it in 9th grade in 2005. We're really aging ourselves here. And the very first book that I wanted to keep track of was Remembrance Rock by Carl Sandburg, and it's 1067 pages. 1067 pages. And that's why I started this, because I wanted to keep track of how long it took me to read that book. And it took me November, December, January. It took me 3 months to read that book. And it was the only thing I read in that time. If I was reading that book. We've got 9th grade all the way up until 2020 when I started doing my color coding and actually keeping track of how much time per day that I spent reading. This actually goes to the end of 2021, but I'm keeping this forever because in 30 years, when I'm 60, I'll be able to be like, oh yeah, I read Wicked for the first time in 2006. So I thought I read it in 2004, but it was 2006, from March 3rd to March 9th. And part of me thinks that maybe that was the second time I'd read it, but I don't think that's true. This is part of where my not wanting to DNF a book comes from, because if I DNF'd it, then I crossed it out. There were a couple up here that I crossed out, and it just made the notebook look ugly, and I didn't like that. So I stopped DNFing books. I was like, all right, if I'm reading it, I'm reading it. So I only read Wicked the one time in March of 2006, and then I read Son of a Witch toward the end of March. Actually, I started it on my birthday, 3/18, when I turned 15, and then finished it a few days later. And I feel like I always meant to go back and reread Wicked because I wanted to continue the series. I was reading it when they were fairly new. Not all of the books were out. I don't think the 3rd book was out when I read the 2nd. What was I gonna do? And then I just never went back to it. Now is my chance to reread this, and who knows, maybe I will reread Son of a Witch and then continue on in this series, because I think there was so much that was still unclear or that I wanted to know about, and the world is so different from what we know. And I think that when I first read this, I had not read the original Wizard of Oz by L. Frank Baum. I hadn't seen the musical. I didn't know anything about it, but I was absolutely obsessed with the musical in, I want to say 10th or 11th grade. We had our licenses at that point. I was listening to it in the car a lot, so probably 11th. So this originally took me from 3/3 to 3/9, which is a full 7 days. So we'll see if this takes me a full 7 days again, hopefully less. And I can't decide. I might see if Libby has the audiobook to speed up the reading and listen to it in a different way. But that kind of takes away from the experience I had originally. It'll be a completely different experience. And I don't know if I want that, you know? And do I want to just reread it and re-experience it the way I did previously? Or do I want to add a new layer, listen to the audiobook? And then I dug out my bookmark that says, "You say wicked like it's a bad thing," because I have to use it when I'm reading this book. As you can see, I have a lot of various Elphaba and Wicked swag. I have a playbill from when my mom took me to see it, probably in 2006 or 7 when it came to Detroit. And I think I've seen it 3 times now because I just saw it in February with one of my friends. And what do I actually remember about this 18 years later? Well, I remember when I first saw the musical, I was like, oh, the musical is way better, because I was unhappy with the ending of this, and the musical is a lot more hopeful and a lot nicer. This is sad, and it was very political, and I feel like a lot of the political stuff went over my head. I remember there being a scene with a well that freaked me out, and I remember there being some weird tension, some weird, like, kind of sexual stuff, but apparently not weird enough to actually stick out. And me and my cousin, who I was really close to at the time, read this around the same time or read it together, and so we were constantly talking about, like, oh, did you get to this part? What page are you on? And it was very fun. So I'm excited to get into this and talk through my thoughts now that I am older and will understand more. I'm 28 pages into Wicked, and it is already so much weirder than I remember. First of all, her father is a minister preaching against the pleasure faith or whatever. The time dragon, like, starts all of this off. Like, okay, first of all, the prologue where Elphaba is, like, watching Dorothy and all the people, they start talking rumors about the Wicked Witch of the West, and they're like, I heard she's a man, I heard she's, like, trans, like, just weird shit. Like, that's how you're opening your book, by talking about all these rumors about how, like, she's not human, she's not a man, she's not a woman, she's both. Like, what? I'm worried about how this is going to handle, like, is it equating being transgender with being bad? It's definitely associating it with being weird and, like, gross, and the fact that when everyone thinks she's evil, the rumors are about her sexuality and her gender. Like, I don't love it. Her father goes off to, like, preach, and he's almost murdered, and her mother thinks she's disgusting, and the baby is born and then bites off someone's finger immediately. What is happening? How did the musical get made out of this? That is the biggest leap. That is crazy. So, you know, 28 pages in and already, like, what the frick is happening? Like, I know what's happening and I get it, but I don't get why. How did this get so popular? Is it just the weirdness factor? Also, this was originally published in 1995. That's insane. And I listened to, like, 2 minutes of the audiobook. The audiobook is more recent. I think it's from, like, 2000 or something, or even more recent, and I think it's a weird choice for the audiobook to be narrated by a man, because, like, yes, it's written by a man, but, like, I don't know, I guess it's not told from Elphaba's point of view. I'm mostly filming this clip because my hair looks so good right now, and by the time I wake up tomorrow, it's not gonna look this cute. So, like, look at this curl, this wave, like, she's a movie star. And I'm gonna get it chopped off in May. But I am only 60 pages into Wicked. I've been listening to the audiobook a bit today, and I still think it's a weird choice to have a man narrate it, but it's decent. I will listen to more of it as I try to get through this. I feel like it's going to take me a while. It's 400 pages, and I'm only 60 pages in. It's been 2 days. Like, that's okay, 30 pages a day, but, like, it's going to take a while if I keep going at that pace. And the thing that's standing out to me so far is that there's no subtlety. Like, I actually think being 15 was probably the right age to read this book, which is a weird choice because there's a lot of weird sex stuff in here. And so, like, it wasn't a great time to read it or a great age, but the political stuff feels so heavy-handed. And Elphaba, she's only 2. Like, we've only made it through 2 years of her life, so we're mostly learning about her mother, Melina, and her father, Frex. Melina is, like, just kind of sad. She chose this man, and now they're out in the middle of nowhere. And then the Quadling glassblower shows up, and he is, like, he's not fighting. He was on his way to Oz to campaign for his people and for them to not build the yellow brick road in Quadling country, but he got waylaid and waylaid, if you know what I mean, by stopping at Melina's house. So it's so heavy-handed. Like, the unhappy wife, the clueless husband, the child, and this is full spoilers, so, like, Elphaba's first word is horror or horrors. Like, really? This child with incredibly sharp teeth and green skin, her first word is horrors? Also, there was a scene where she, like, pees on the floor, and I'm like, why? Why is this in here? Like, I just don't get what it's trying to do in this first section. I know what it's trying to do. It's trying to set up the world and set up the political stuff and the religious stuff, but it's so heavy-handed because you have Frex, who is a minister of the unnamed god and holiness and whatever, and then you have they're called Unionists, his, like, religion, and then you have the TikTokers, which I think is really funny that TikTok is a thing, and it's spelled that way too, like TikTok. The TikTokers, they are part of the pleasure faith, which is based around the dragon clock, and, like, it's just very strange, and I'm not getting much from it right now. Like, I don't mind it. I think that Gregory Maguire's writing does have something to it, but everything's just over the top. The characters so far, over the top. The political maneuvering, the religious overtones, over the top. No subtlety. You are being backhanded with information, with, you know, setting up the pieces to make big statements later. That's how it's going. I will update you when I've made it further in the book. Every day when I get home from work, this is my life. Diva, say hi. Look at this girl. One time, she headbutted my head so hard that she almost pushed herself off my shoulder. Girl, what are you doing? She's crazy. She helps me pack my lunch for the next day. Oh, look at all that dandruff. My dandruffy baby. Hi. Now she's gonna settle. Always me and the boy. What if I just film at this angle? So I am 80 pages in, and I'm liking it a lot more. There's something about Gregory Maguire's writing that is doing it. Like, he's doing it. Oh, okay, bye. The part that I have gotten to, we are finally meeting Galinda. The part with Elphaba's early life ended with her, like, hiding with the little glass ball that the glass blower made, and the glass blower being like, he's here, this man arriving in a balloon red as a blood drop. Like, obviously, if you know the story of the Wizard of Oz, you're like, oh, that's the wizard. And now Galinda is 17. I'm assuming Elphaba is around the same age, so it's been 15 years since he arrived, and now the Wizard of Oz is in charge, and we're being like introduced to even more stuff. So in the first part, we have the Unionists versus the Pleasure Faith. And now we're being introduced to animals with a capital A, and their rights are slowly being taken away. We're introduced to Dillamond on the train with Galinda, and we have been kind of in Galinda's head, mostly following her point of view, meeting Madame Morrible, getting assigned a roommate. They have nannies, which is really interesting. They're called amas for this group of people. I think that Gregory Maguire really excels at world building. He is giving us this huge whole world and still making it interesting. Like, it doesn't feel info dumpy, it doesn't feel boring. It's a little over the top, it's a little heavy-handed, but I'm liking it and I'm interested and it's keeping me reading. Also, something I thought about, there is one scene, so two scenes. We've talked about the well scene, which that's one of the few things that I remember is a kid hiding in a well. But there's another scene that I always thought was strange and I never understood why it was there or what it was doing or what it was about. And it involves Madame Morrible, I think, taking the girls to meet the wizard. And I think there's like a weird orgy that happens or something strange. And I just remember reading that scene like 3 times and not understanding what was happening. So I can't wait to get to that point and like maybe as an adult I'll understand what's happening in that scene. But as a 15-year-old, I was like, what? And it's not an orgy. It's like Elphaba has a strange feeling and they're kind of drugged and in a dreamy state and something happens and I didn't get it. I didn't understand what was happening. So I'll be interested to see if I understand it now. I'll let you know when I get there because I feel like I will recognize it. I'm on page 224 of Wicked and a lot has happened. Madame Morrible enchants the girls and invites them to be like spies for her basically, but then tells them that they are not allowed to remember any of this. So then the girls, they figured out who murdered Dr. Dillamond and go to the wizard to try and get him to stop this or like any kind of justice system. And Elphaba stays behind and sends Glinda back to school. And then we skip 3 years. And I think what's crazy to me so far about this book is that even though it is called The Life and Times of the Wicked Witch of the West, we are not getting Elphaba's point of view. We are not getting Elphaba's story from her. We are still getting it from other people. So like, I guess in that little prologue, that first part where she is following Dorothy and the group, that prologue, we get her point of view briefly and her listening to the rumors about herself. But then we go to her parents and we're getting the story of her parents and what went down there. And then we go to Galinda and her arrival at Shiz and Galinda's interactions with Elphaba. And then we get Bach and Bach's interactions with Elphaba. And then in this part, we're getting Fiero's interactions with Elphaba. And we're not actually getting what Elphaba is doing, which really takes away some of the power and interest. Like, how does she become this feared wicked witch? What is she doing? What is she doing for the 3 years that she's not in school? We know she's some sort of like underground rebel, and in one of the scenes where Fiero follows her, she is meant to murder or assassinate Madame Morrible, and then fails because a bunch of school children are there and she can't do it. But then Fiero dies because he's beaten by the guard because they like follow him from this moment. Like, why is he beaten though? Like, nothing makes sense in this book anymore. Like, yeah, there's political unrest, because you've got the animals, you've got the religious stuff, and then there are other groups like the Quadlings that are also like downtrodden. But like, I just feel like this world is not as well built as I thought it was. And back in the day, I remember living for Fiyero and Elphaba's romance. But actually, Fiyero is kind of pushy. She tells him to go away multiple times and he doesn't. And then they just kind of like fall into bed with each other. And I forgot that Fiyero is married in the book. He's married to some other, he's a Winky? Is that right? Yeah, he's a Winky and is married and has 3 kids, but he's carrying on this affair with Elphaba. And am I supposed to root for that as a romance? What is the point that this author is trying to make? That she will sleep with another woman's husband? Or that like she came to care for Fiyero and then he died and now she's even more radicalized? Like, I just don't get it. I'm not understanding how this is all coming together, how this is supposed to lead to her being the Wicked Witch. Like, I also low-key don't know how the musical came from this book. How did they do that? And the musical is so different, like insanely different. So that's the update. I'm like halfway done. So I didn't realize, but I've been watching all of the reaction to Watcher launching a streaming service and like not putting content on YouTube anymore, and that's wild. It's like 12:30 at night and I really need to go to bed, but I fell down a rabbit hole around 10 or 10:30. I should have been reading, but I was just reading through the comments on their videos, watching like other YouTubers dissect the business decision. Just, it's crazy. It's crazy to see this unfold. I don't know how to feel about this book. I'm 300 pages in, just about, and Elphaba has been staying at Kiamoko with Fiyero's wife and sisters, and it's kind of an unspoken thing. Like, Sarima refuses to hear what Elphaba came there to say, and basically, like, kind of, I can't tell if she knows that Elphaba was the other woman, but the rumors are that Fiyero died in like a love nest. The sisters think that Fiyero was sleeping with Glinda, and then the husband, Glinda's husband, murdered him out of jealousy or spite or whatever. But then we've got Lear, who is Elphaba and Fiyero's son, and the book is kind of coy about whether or not the boy is Elphaba's for like a while. And why? Why are you trying, are you trying to keep tension? Trying to keep mystery? Like, oh, who's this boy? Like, of course it's her fucking kid. Like, what? I'm just tired. I don't want to read this anymore. I have 100 pages left, and it doesn't feel like it's leading up to anything. Elphaba is not learning anything. Nothing's in her point of view. So it's really weird to have this book about this character, and she has very little agency, it feels. She's just kind of doing whatever, and we don't get inside her head. So like, we don't know her justification for anything, her reasoning for anything. We didn't know why she felt connected to Fiyero, why she married him, why after 5 or 6 years she decided to come to Kiamoko and like confess to Sarima. Like, why? For what? It's just frustrating at this point. I'm frustrated. I don't even understand what younger Megan saw in this book. Like, it was just like edgy. Was that it? Edgy and weird, and like there's a lot of sex and like weird, well, there's not even a lot of sex, but there's sex and there's weird gender stuff, and like the tiger sex scene that Tibbet freaking dies from. What is that? I was talking to my roommate and she was like, oh yeah, I read somewhere that like it was supposed to be not a metaphor, but like a allegory, something of AIDS. And I'm like, what the flip is happening? So Tibbet goes to the philosophy club. I don't know if I already talked about this. This was like 100 pages ago. There's a weird sex scene. It's very vague with a tiger. And then he's, quote unquote, never the same after that. And then when Elphaba is like grieving Fiyero and working at this church or whatever as kind of a nun, Tibbet shows up there and like she tends him in his last several days. And it's like, what happened? Like, it's so, everything is so vague. Anything concrete, it's just vague. The children in this, like the world in this is dark. This is a dark, sad world where children are awful. Like Sarima's children basically torture Lear. They threaten to throw him off the top of the roof. When they first meet, they make him pull down his pants and show them his thing. Like, these two young boys are like, prove that your thing's not green like your mom. Like, who does that? What kind of little kid's first thought is that? It feels like the adults who are obsessed with like, kids don't understand sex, kids need to be protected, but then they are weirdly like, anything that even, it's just adults being weird, and an adult wrote this about kids being weird. And then the scene that I did remember, Lear in the well, he hides there and Manic, one of the boys, convinces him to go hide in the well. And then when all the parents are like, where's Lear? He hasn't shown up for dinner. Where is he? All the kids are like, I don't know. Like, I hate these children. These kids are assholes. A day or two later, when they find Lear, and he's practically dead in this well. What? And then the other what is Elphaba is like looking at an icicle, thinking about hot and cold anger and the genders, and you know, men have hot anger because it's fiery and it burns and then it's over. Women have cold anger, and I'm like, well, that sounds sexist as hell. Both men and women have both kinds of anger, but okay. And then this icicle falls and like kills Manic, going through his head. What? Nothing makes sense in this book. Nothing is strung together. It's all just a thought experiment about the nature of good and evil, and it's not even a good exploration of it. I'm mad. I'm mad that I used to like this. I'm mad that this inspired an entire musical that they have next to nothing in common. Oh my god. And then I was reading the Wikipedia for the sequel. I read the sequel in 2006. I have no memory of it. I do not remember anything that happened. I remember not liking it as much as this, but still kind of liking it. No, absolutely not. I will not be rereading that, and I will not be continuing on in this series, because the Cowardly Lion book apparently goes back in time and is like leading up to the Cowardly Lion being with Dorothy and them and destroying Elphaba. So it's like, no, absolutely not. And I don't care about the little green girl who was born at the end of the second book. I don't care. This was a comment I read online. I don't really understand why, in a world with munchkins and quadlings and all these different creatures with their different colorings, and like even Fiyero had like blue tattoos and stuff, why is it weird that Elphaba's green? It's never explained. Oh, her mother drank some of that elixir that the bottle was like taken. How does that explain it? It doesn't. I just want to finish this and be done with it. Am I gonna unhaul this? I don't think I can. Like, the memories I have of reading it the first time hold me back from unhauling it. I guess I'm a little sad that my memory has been tainted now, that this is not good. This isn't good, and I don't enjoy it. The musical has better everything, better character growth, better understanding of the characters, a better plot. This doesn't have a plot. It's just like following Elphaba through her life. Also, Fiyero getting murdered, make it make sense. Like, the political situation also makes no sense. Like, what? I'm sad. What are you doing, bud? Ah! What are you doing? Stop it. Sir. Sir. Anyway, it is a floor update time. You know. Sir, get out of here. So this is a floor update because I have like 60 pages left in this and I just want to finish it. And you know what I used to do? You know, look at his little nose. What are you doing? Get out of here. In grad school, when I really needed to finish reading a book, sir, when I really needed to finish a book, I would get down on the, sir, the sound on this is going to be a nightmare. I would get down on the floor and I would just read. And that was how I could focus. I needed floor time. And that is how I'm feeling about this book, because I'm in the last section. Dorothy has finally showed up. And let me tell you, I hate the time jumps in this. I hate them. They're so stupid. People at the Vinkus Castle at Kiamoko, they all get kidnapped while Elphaba is away visiting her sister Nessarose, who became like the president of Munchkinland. And when she gets back, like, they all got kidnapped and she never gets them back. And then there's a 7-year time jump. Sir. And that 7-year time jump, she starts experimenting on her monkeys and sews wings onto them so they can be the flying monkeys. And it's like, how do you get from someone who respects capital A animals to someone who experiments on little a animals? Like, it doesn't make sense. So that's where I'm at. I am ready to finish this. So let's go. And hopefully the next update will be, hey, I finished this and it's the end of the vlog. Right, Vino? Right? He says, yeah. I'm in the same position we were when I started this video. I'm wearing the same pajama shirt and I have finished Wicked. I'm confused. So I think when I last updated you, I was about 100 pages from the end. In that time, Elphaba's sister Nessarose became like president of the Munchkinlanders. There was like a revolt. She seceded from the Wizard of Oz and like all of Oz as to be a separate like country. Somehow she became known as the Wicked Witch of the East, and like Nessa was more known as a witch and like the Wicked Witch, and Elphaba kind of became the Wicked Witch of the West just in comparison. So like she didn't even do anything to earn that title. It happened because her sister earned a nickname and a title. And I think one of my biggest issues with this book is that Elphaba is not a point of view character. She is like for one section We don't really understand why she does the things she does. Like, sometimes we do, but not always. Third, she is a passive character. She is not an active character who is doing things and propelling the plot. The plot just happens to her, and that makes it feel even more contrived. Even toward the end, when we're getting stuff about Mother Yackle and the dragon clock that is at the very beginning of the story, there's like an element of Gregory Maguire was trying to tie things together and trying to make it make sense, but he never really achieved that. Like, why are all of these things happening? Because Mother Yackle tried to make them happen, because Mother Yackle has been manipulating Elphaba in the story the whole time to create this adversary for the wizard, but to what purpose? Like, why? Why does any of it matter? Why is any of it happening? We never figure it out. I will say, the last section, which I just also think the art for the last section is kind of gorgeous. Like, this image right here, amazing, absolutely stunning. But that last section does finally pick up the events of Dorothy arriving, the house landing on Nessarose, and Glinda giving the shoes to Dorothy. So like all of that finally happens, and then like Elphaba like kind of goes insane. We meet, I guess the thing about that last section is it gives us a little bit of catharsis for the story overall, because Elphaba finally goes back and visits and meets all of those friends that she had at the beginning and learns what became of their life. Again, to what purpose? Like, Glinda is rich and selfish, and we find out like she didn't really grow up or become helpful. She does a lot of charity, but she does it because she's rich. And why not? And she can dress pretty. I think actually the most interesting thing is that Bach in this is one of the only good characters. He is one of the only decent people in this book. And then he was done so dirty in the musical, which is absolutely baffling. They did all of these good things for these terrible characters, and then they took it out on Bach and made him awful. How rude. I remember thinking that when I first saw the musical, that like Bach didn't deserve that, because Bach in the musical is a little bitch. Anyway, back to this. So I did feel a little something, a little catharsis, a little interest, because Elphaba is becoming nostalgic. So I guess we become nostalgic for the early parts of the book. But then she just goes off the rails. She like stops sleeping. She takes part of the magical elixir that her mother first took that turned her green, probably, that we learn the wizard probably brought. When Dorothy arrives, she is just like insane with grief, basically. Dorothy asks for forgiveness for killing her sister, and I don't think I truly, like, I don't remember that hitting me hard, or I don't remember that part of the book from when I read it the first time, that Elphaba went to Kiamo Ko, to Sarima, to ask for forgiveness for Fiero's murder. Sarima never gave that to her, never allowed her to ask for it. So she technically never withheld it, but she never gave it either. And then to have Dorothy show up and do the same thing and ask for forgiveness, Elphaba she like screamed and her broom dropped fire on her. Dorothy tries to put the fire out and then she dies. And you know what? It's never explained why water could kill her. Is it supposed to be because she doesn't have a soul that water can dissolve her? What's the purpose here, Gregory? And it's a little disappointing actually to know that because this blew up, and because the musical also blew up, we're probably not going to get a retelling of The Wicked Witch of the West for a really long time. Like, it's already been almost 20 years since this book came out. It came out in 95. No, it's almost been 30 years, right? Yeah, it's almost been 30 years since this came out. And have we had a Wicked Witch retelling in that time other than the musical? No. What do I think of this? This was supposed to be rereading my favorites vlog, and this is no longer a favorite. I can guarantee that. And what's a little upsetting is that I have a lot of Gregory Maguire's other books, like 4 or 5 of them, because I loved this so much when I was 14 that I was like, I need to buy all his books. I need to read everything he writes. But then I read Son of a Witch and I did not like that as much. Oh boy. And when I first started this video, I was like, maybe I'll reread the whole, I'll read the whole series and I'll finally finish it and we'll get to Out of Oz. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I was reading the Wikipedia for Son of a Witch the other day. That book sounds insane. Absolutely insane. No, thank you. I'm done with this one. And I'm kind of interested to read his other books to see if he ever got better, but I'm worried because the worldview in this is dark and depressing. And there was a spot toward the end that kind of made sense because it was like, children don't have moral character and that's something they have to teach. Like, children are little beasts. And I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense with everything else he wrote about children in this and how children act. They're just little jerks until you teach them morals. And there was a lot of like pathologizing, romanticizing, preaching about what is good and what is evil and what are these things. And then like the religion, I guess I don't understand what point this book was making, because it talks about religion and souls and the nature of evil. And I guess I never really understood the point. Elphaba doesn't really do anything evil. Nessa Rose does. And she's supposed to be the religious one. So like, is he saying something about organized religion? Is that why edgy 14-year-old Megan was like, oh yeah, down with organized religion. And also it's got weird sex in it. And also a woman who is alone all the time. Like, what was I on? What was I thinking? Why did I love this? I am so far removed from 14-year-old Megan that I don't understand why I loved this. I thought when Elphaba and Fiyero started sleeping together, oh my God, I was so obsessed. I was like, oh my God, they're sleeping together and he's married and they're gonna fall in love. And I remember when he got, beaten to death, being like, oh my God, and like heartbroken. And is it just the fact that young people feel more deeply than older people? Is that true? We believe that to be true. I low-key believe it to be true because everything is new and everything is fresh and your hormones are firing at a higher level. Teenagers literally feel more than adults. Is that why I like this? Because I could feel more? Because I cared more? I don't know. Anyway, in the end, I'm really debating between a 2 and a 3 star for this because the ending did make me feel a little bit. Felt a little bit. But is it worth all of the nonsense, the absolute nothingness of this plot? Things don't make sense. Like, why is Elphaba so well known in the Emerald City? Why do characters know of her? Why does she have a reputation? She never freaking did anything. She didn't murder Madame Morrible when she was supposed to be an assassin in the middle part when Fiyero dies. She supposedly worked with a terrorist group, but we never see any of that. We never know any of it. We don't get any details about it. So like in the last section when she's like 38, she murders Madame Morrible finally, but she was probably already dead when Elphaba got there. Basically, the worldview in this is that everything gets worse, nothing gets better, no one cares about anyone but themselves, and people suck. And maybe 14-year-old Megan found that enlightening or edgy or cool. 33-year-old Megan does not. I think I'm going to give this 2 stars. The writing was fine, but the content was not good. Wow. This is supposed to be rereading my favorites, and the danger of that is you don't like it as much anymore. I prefer the musical now. It has more heart, it has more plot. Am I going to keep this book? Maybe for the nostalgia factor. Also, the ambiguity about Lear not being her son and her not knowing that she gave birth to a son, like, what was that? Why? Why can't she remember? Was it to absolve her from not having motherly feelings? Because, like, if she's truly wicked, like, what was he doing there? Was he trying to be like, oh, people aren't wicked because they don't love their children? It's not, she doesn't know it's her child, so it's okay that she treats him like shit. Like, what were you saying, Gregory? I don't understand. So that is my rereading of Wicked. Let me know if you've read this and what you remember about it. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, you could click that like button. You could subscribe to me, but really, you could do whatever you want. And hopefully next time, my favorite is still a favorite.